There is a war older than time, one that began before the world was formed, before man took his first breath. A war not of swords or armies, but of wills, pride, and light turned to shadow. It's a tale etched into the fabric of existence itself. At the heart of it lies a name that echoes through eternity: Lucifer, the most beautiful of all created beings, the one who stood beside the throne of God, the one who chose to fall. You may think you know the story: a rebellious angel cast from heaven, a devil who tempts and deceives. But what if I told you there's more? Much more. This is not a story about monsters, it's a story about mirrors, because in Lucifer's journey, we see our own reflection. His pride, his ambition, his fall, they live within the choices we make every day. In this series, we're not just retelling a myth. We're exposing the spiritual anatomy of rebellion, of light corrupted by ego, of truth shadowed by self-worship. You'll see how an angel became the adversary, and how you and I walk the same battlefield today, with every thought, every decision, every allegiance we declare in silence. Stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you won't just understand why Lucifer fell, you'll understand how to stand where he didn't. And that knowledge might just change your life. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you're ready for a raw, soul-stirring confrontation with the truth. Let's begin at the very beginning. He was not created to fall. Lucifer was shaped with beauty that made the stars jealous, wisdom that outshone every other angel, and authority that resonated through the halls of heaven. He was the first, the leader, the morning star, crafted by the Creator himself, not as a servant, but as a masterpiece. He was the embodiment of divine excellence, entrusted with the harmonies of eternity, the guardian of sacred rhythms. And yet the very brilliance that marked him as favored became the very mirror through which pride crept in. How does the perfect fall? Slowly, subtly, invisibly, until it becomes inevitable. And it always starts with a question. Lucifer began to see his reflection not as a sign of divine gift, but as proof of personal supremacy. The worship he once gave so freely now felt incomplete. The light he radiated so joyfully started to feel like something earned, not granted. What if he wasn't just a reflection of glory, but its rightful owner? The moment you stop seeing your gift as something given and start believing it was yours to begin with, corruption begins, and no one noticed. Because pride doesn't scream. It whispers, it suggests, it entices, and it disguises itself as growth, progress, confidence. But under it all is the rod of ego, waiting to take over. He didn't rebel in a blaze of rage. He questioned, quietly, intelligently. He posed ideas, not ultimatums. What if heaven's structure wasn't sacred but outdated? What if God's throne wasn't absolute but assumed? He started with possibility, not protest. And that is how rebellion gains ground. Not through chaos, but through carefully crafted doubt. He saw the hierarchy as limitation. He saw God's love as control. He saw himself not as subject to heaven, but perhaps its rightful heir. And the worst part? He was convincing. He sounded noble. Because when pride wears the costume of righteousness, even the holiest minds can be swayed. When God revealed his next act of creation, Lucifer didn't just hear the announcement. He felt the shift. Humanity, flesh and bone, fragile, failing, and yet, beloved. In that moment, Lucifer was not just disappointed, he was undone. To worship God incarnate? Unthinkable. To bow before humans? Unbearable. But worse than the command was the implication. Heaven was not the final masterpiece. Someone else was being chosen, and Lucifer's pride interpreted that choice as betrayal. Because when ego rules the heart, every act of love feels like an offense. And so, silently, he began to turn. He didn't scream his defiance, he whispered it. A single word, uttered not to heaven but to himself. No. And that whisper was a spark, one that would ignite all of eternity. Others heard it. Not the word, but the reasoning behind it. They too began to feel overlooked, underappreciated, restrained. And what Lucifer offered was not war, it was freedom. Freedom from service, freedom from structure, freedom to rule. He did not have to force them. He had to reveal to them. The most dangerous revolutions don't begin with fire, they begin with a mirror. He painted God's order as oppression, obedience as slavery, humility as weakness. He used the very language heaven had taught him to destroy what heaven had built. "Why should beings made of light bow to clay?" he asked. "Why should we serve when we were born to shine?" His words were laced with inspiration, but dripping with poison. He validated their greatness to manipulate their loyalty. He uplifted their value to undermine their design. And they followed, not because they hated God, but because they misunderstood him. That is how light becomes darkness, not through rejection, but redefinition. Lucifer became a movement, a cause, a revolution hidden beneath language of justice and elevation. And then Michael stood, quiet, humble, but unwavering. And with one phrase, everything changed. Who is like God? Not a question, but a declaration. A reminder that no brilliance compares to the source of brilliance, that no creation, no matter how radiant, can eclipse the Creator. And in that moment, the war began, not in violence, but in truth. Two ideologies collided, one of prideful ambition, the other of surrendered worship. And heaven would never be the same again. Lucifer's rhetoric was magnetic. It stirred the hearts of the most gifted. He didn't want followers of fear. He wanted followers of pride. Those who looked at themselves and thought, "I deserve more." And the irony was, they did shine. These weren't lowly spirits. These were the most radiant, most powerful, most capable. The very qualities that made them useful in heaven now made them vulnerable to rebellion. He didn't have to convince them they were worthy. He had to convince them that God didn't see it. And once that seed was planted, it grew fast and wild. Meetings began in secret, conversations behind cloaks of starlight. "You were made for more," Lucifer told them. "Heaven is not your ceiling, it's your prison." And for those who had long felt their glory unnoticed, the message hit hard. They started to believe they were victims of a flawed system, that their brilliance had been capped, their worship repackaged, that they could become gods if only they broke the chain of divine submission. He wasn't asking them to hate God. He was asking them to surpass him. That's how you fall, by thinking you've outgrown your maker. Then came the line in the sand. A divine command echoed through heaven. Choose. Not a threat, but a loving ultimatum. Will you stand in the truth of who you were made to be, or chase the illusion of self-made greatness? Heaven paused. Some wept, some bowed, but a third did not move. Among them, Lucifer stepped forward, no longer hiding, no longer wondering. He didn't question anymore. He declared, "We will rise. We will not serve." And with that, the fracture was final. Heaven had split, not by force, but by choice. And the war of wills became a war of realms. Lucifer stood, wings spread wide, a general of light turned shadow, and facing him, Michael, not with hatred, not with vengeance, but with loyalty, pure, unwavering loyalty. The sword he carried was not one of destruction, but conviction, forged in truth, empowered by humility. They clashed, not in rage, but in resolve. And the battle that followed did not burn heaven, it illuminated it. Because when truth is tested, it doesn't shatter, it shines brighter. And though Lucifer was strong, he lacked the one weapon that cannot be faked: truth. Lucifer's fall wasn't a punishment, it was a result, a natural outcome of separation from the source. Light cannot survive when it tries to outshine its origin. He fell like a star not because he was thrown, but because he lost gravity. He cut himself off from the very love that sustained him. And as he fell, he was not empty. He was burning, not with purpose, but with bitterness. Because pride, when denied what it wants, turns not into surrender, but into hatred. And where worship once lived, vengeance took root. He landed not in fire, but in absence. Hell is not a place God sends you. It's what happens when you leave him. Lucifer became Satan, not by title, but by transformation. And in the ashes of his fall, he made a vow. If I cannot have the light, I will extinguish it. And he looked toward earth, not because earth was powerful, but because it was precious. And that is the heart of evil, not destruction for chaos, but destruction as revenge. Revenge against love, against being replaced, against being forgotten. Now Satan watches. He doesn't always roar. Sometimes he whispers, just like he did before. You deserve more. You're better than this. Why serve when you can be served? And the war that began in heaven continues in every human heart. Every time you choose ego over obedience. Every time you choose pride over peace. Every time you choose to elevate yourself at the expense of truth, you echo his fall. But every time you choose humility, grace, service, surrender, you echo Michael's cry. Who is like God? He doesn't need to attack you with terror when he can distract you with comfort. That's the enemy's new strategy. Not open rebellion, but quiet deviation. He doesn't say, hate God. He says, you're already doing enough. He doesn't say, turn away. He says, you can go later. The battlefield has moved from heaven's courts to your heart's silence. If the enemy can convince you to live passively, he doesn't need you to rebel actively. Spiritual warfare today isn't in grand gestures. It's in the slow drift, the neglected prayer, the avoided apology, the bitterness disguised as boundaries. You've been given what Lucifer was denied, a second chance. That alone should humble you. You failed, so did Peter. You doubted, so did Thomas. You fell, so did David. But they returned. Lucifer did not. That's the difference. Redemption is not the absence of failure, it's the presence of humility. And humility is the one thing Satan will never embrace. He would rather reign in hell than kneel in heaven. And you have that choice every day. The choice to return, the choice to bow, the choice to say, not my will, but yours. That choice makes you dangerous to darkness. There is power in surrender, the kind of power that terrifies hell, because the enemy knows a heart yielded to God is a weapon he cannot touch. Satan fears your obedience more than your success. He trembles at your repentance more than your confidence. Why? Because every act of surrender echoes heaven's victory. Every time you lay down pride, you raise up a banner against him. The spiritual realm doesn't respond to talent, it responds to authority. And authority doesn't come from asserting yourself. It comes from submitting to the one who reigns. That's power. That's protection. The devil doesn't come after you because you're weak. He comes after you because you're valuable. He saw what heaven invested in you. He knows what you were created for. That's why he attacks your identity. Because if he can confuse your identity, he can distort your destiny. That's how he fought with Eve. Not with force, but with doubt. Did God really say? It worked then, and it works now. He doesn't have to overpower you. He just has to get you to question who you are. But here's the truth. You're not who your failures say you are. You're who your Father calls you. Every moment you live aware of eternity, you terrify hell. Why? Because most people are asleep, distracted, numb, entertained into spiritual comas. But not you. Not anymore. The moment you woke up to the spiritual battle, you became a threat. You're not just a soul to be saved. You're a soldier being armed. Your worship is warfare. Your purity is resistance. Your faith is a flaming sword. Every time you say yes to God, you put pressure on darkness. Don't let your weariness convince you to retreat. You were born for this fight. Heaven did not make a mistake when it chose you. The enemy wants to isolate you, because isolation is the echo chamber of destruction. Alone, you start to doubt. Alone, you start to spiral. Alone, you become prey. But God designed you for communion, for community, for covering. That's why pride pushes people away. It keeps you from accountability. If the devil can keep you hidden, he can keep you hurting. That's why healing starts with exposure. Bring it to the light, whatever it is, because what you reveal, God can redeem. And what you hide, the enemy will twist. You don't have to do this alone. You were never meant to. You are part of the aftermath of the first rebellion, but you're also part of the redemption plan. Every choice you make echoes through eternity. You are not insignificant. You are not forgotten. Your worship matters. Your obedience matters. Your silence matters. This is not mythology. This is your moment. The war between pride and humility isn't just celestial. It's personal. It's now, right here, right in your decisions, your thoughts, your responses. And you're not powerless. You carry the light, not because you earned it, but because you were trusted with it. You've now seen the story for what it truly is, not just the fall of an angel, but the battle behind every decision you make. Pride didn't begin in a palace or a battlefield. It began in the heart of the most beautiful being ever created, and it lives on today, not with horns or fire, but in small thoughts, quiet doubts, subtle decisions. That's why this story matters, because it's not just about Lucifer, it's about you, about us, about the war within. Every time you choose to forgive when pride wants revenge, you win. Every time you bow your heart when your ego wants to rise, you win. And every time you follow the voice of truth over the noise of self-glory, you don't just resist darkness, you reflect the light of heaven. That's the invitation in front of you now. Not to be perfect, but to be surrendered. To lay down the fight to be seen and pick up the call to serve. The enemy still whispers, "You don't need God. You've got this." But heaven is calling louder. Return to your Creator. Trust the one who made you. This isn't about religion. It's about restoration. About remembering who you are. You were not made to be lost in the shadows. You were made to walk in the light. And now you know the truth. The question is, what will you do with it? Don't let this just be another video you watch and forget. Let it be a turning point. If something in your spirit stirred today, act on it. Choose humility, choose obedience, choose light. Inscribe these truths on your heart and let them shape your life. And if you're ready to live with clarity, with conviction, with courage, subscribe to this channel and follow Jesus. Because this is more than content. It's your calling. Speak it aloud today. I will not serve pride. I will serve the one who gave me life. That one declaration can shift your entire direction. Don't wait until everything makes sense. Obedience comes before understanding, and the moment you take that first step back toward the Father, all of heaven rejoices. You are not too far. You are not too broken. You are not forgotten. You are loved, and you are called. And if you ever forget that, come back. Watch this again. Share it with someone who needs to hear what you heard. Leave a comment below with the moment that hit you the hardest. Let this be the start of something deeper, something real. You're not alone. You're not watching by accident. This was for you. And if you're still here, that means you're ready. Ready to walk in truth. Ready to stand with heaven. My name is Oliver. I'm not a pastor, not a preacher. Just someone who's been where you are. I've stood in darkness too. I've listened to the same lies. But I found the light. Not by deserving it, but by surrendering to it. And now I share these stories so that you don't have to walk alone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving this your time, your attention, your heart. I see you, I'm with you, and I'll be right here every step of the way. Until next time, stay grounded, stay humble, and above all, stay in the light.